What's up? Welcome to the Unmasked Self podcast. My name is Michael. I feel like I should go by like Miguelito or something. I have some friends that call me that, and I think it's kind of cute. So if I introduce myself as Michael, as Miguelito, that's what it is. So, super exciting topic today. I am such a huge fan of the concept of multiple realities. That sounds really woo-woo, right? Oh my gosh, like are we getting into like interdimensional stuff? No, there are actually two very different concepts. I'm looking at this from a black and white lens, the psychological and then the scientific. And today we are jumping into the psychological portion. I want to bridge couple things that we talked about last episode. We spoke about the importance of language and how that leads to understanding and how that leads to regulation within your body. Those are key to what I try to live by in my life. I am a huge advocate in once you understand your inner experience, you get a sense of peace. With that being said, the next question becomes, why does everyone else experience the world so differently than I do or than you do? This one is super interesting to me because I had such a hard time understanding it. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to jump into a little neurodivergence here. My autistic brain works in a very black and white method. There is something that's called splitting in psychological terms. No, it doesn't mean I have split personalities. Splitting is when you have two extremes, black and white perspective. You see things as either all good or all bad. And that can be troublesome because of how gray the world is. So this is a concept that I had a very hard time understanding because I was so into my experience, and at times I unintentionally gaslit the experience of other people, which is why this is such a profound episode for me, because it is something that has been hard for me to truly grasp, and I want to share in hopes that it will shed some light, or you can feel as though you're not alone when you question yourself or you question the methods of others. So let's jump in. The very first thing I want to start with, what is reality? The key idea with this is that there is one shared world, but many lived realities. I want to repeat that. There is one shared world that we all live in, but many lived realities. I want to break it down simply into three different subtopics. The first is reality. Reality is what exists in this moment in your past, present, future. The next is perception. Perception I have broken down into how your brain interprets what exists. And the third is experience, how it feels inside your body. So those three subtopics I want to stick with when discussing this core concept. I also feel it's important to find the proper words to describe or flesh out what you're trying to interpret, what you're trying to say. And I came up with a few little taglines that I like to throw in there. And the first tagline that I want to share with you guys is, we don't experience the world directly. We experience our brain's version of it. And I think that is so deep. That's a really big one for me. Accepting the concept of multiple realities. It's that you have to look at it as not experiencing the world directly, but your perception, your experience of that world. And the second one is your nervous system is a filter, not a mirror. Last episode, we went into the nervous system, into regulation, into how words can impact certain things. And this episode, we're going to flesh that out a little bit more and talk about how your experiences impact that current experience. And because of that, your nervous system acts like a filter. Everything that you are perceiving, every single moment of your life is filtered through you and your lens, your reality, your perception. I want to start with some real life examples of this topic. One that I don't want to get super in depth with because it is very polarizing is politics. In America, there are two primary political groups, Democratic and Republican. And when you break those down to the core idea of what they stand for, Republicans stand for more of an economic success. If the economy is doing well, that then translates to you are doing well. The secondary group is Democratic. With Democrats, the core ideology that they focus on are the people. Take care of your people first, and that leads to success of your economy, your livelihood. And within those groups, because of the way people were raised, people get so gung-ho about experiences and their hardships. When you tug on traumas, when you poke at important ideologies, it tends to bring up a lot of emotion, stepping out of who you are for that moment and realizing someone else's lived experience through their lens, which is essentially a different reality. Now I want to jump into more of a personal example. So I watch a lot of reality TV, and I realize that I watch a lot of reality TV because, yes, I do live for the drama. I find it entertaining. But deeper than that is studying people on why they react a certain way. And I really like to dissect perspectives. And when it comes to what I said prior about splitting, it was very hard for me growing up to understand that there wasn't always a 100% right and a 100% wrong. And in reality TV, truthfully, I've learned something from analyzing what people's altercations stem from, the background, the context, then dissecting people's reactions. And those can then be categorized into different topics at that point, because you may be right or feel right in a certain situation doesn't justify certain reactions, and then you can kind of get into the weeds of that and how to properly be emotionally calm, or the opposite, emotionally volatile, which is something I've always struggled with because I feel so strongly and because I would be very justice oriented and I would be splitting. Yeah, so reality TV's, funny enough, has helped me understand people more. In this example, I had an employer who I came on at a very interesting time in their lives. There was a lot of medical stuff happening. They weren't in the best place, and I had just come out from a time off with my father, who was very sick at the time. So there was a lot of pain from that, and we had similarities, and so we felt that it was a good fit. And immediately I saw the help that this company needed. I saw the disorganization, the lack of communication, the chaos that was their reality, and they didn't know any better because they've been operating this business for 20 years this way, like a hustle. And their idea was to grow. And with my help, we had a plan to get things going. From my perspective, I felt that I was asking for help. From their perspective, they felt like they were giving all of the help that they could. And this is where things become gray. And at some point, someone has to give more. And it always felt like I was giving more because they were going through whatever they were going through. While valid, at some point, it still becomes tiresome. It's almost like if you get mistreated by someone that is going through something, you'll give it a pass for certain times. But then after a while, it's like, okay, this is getting old. I am still a person. I still have my needs. You got to figure it out and deal with your problems, because that goes to the idea of, I believe we spoke about this in the last episode, but we are all going through what we're going through. It doesn't make it right to have certain reactions depending on the situation. So I built the business, departments got better, things got so much cleaner. There was never a real heartfelt thank you. It was more so of, okay, well, this is what we hired you to do. There was really no recognition. They were so caught up in their chaos, their reality, that it became very hard for me, because then what I tend to do, and I don't know if other people tend to do this, is I tend to gaslight myself and say, well, if they're saying this, then they must be right. I would almost tell myself that I'm the one that's wrong. It would just put me in this spiral of, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but people are telling me I'm not. And then that's where I had to learn through a lot of pain because I get so invested in the mission, the plan, what we're trying to do. And I've learned that even though your heart's in the best place, it's not everything. It's balance, right? I go back to the balance because whatever that person's perception of what's going on, they're living in their reality. And sometimes it's hard to get people to align on that reality. That's what people call being on the same page or being on the same wavelength. That's being in the same reality, really. So it just became so much back and forth. And then there was personal things, personalities clashing. So I just had to get to a point of stopping the fight, stopping and saying, you know what? I'm not going to gaslight myself anymore. My reality is what it is. I believe the things that I'm going through. I'm experiencing it. And it was so weird for me to sit there and say, yeah, this is how I see things. And that's how they see things. And I think they're wrong. They think I'm wrong. But at some point, I'm tired of the fighting. I'm tired of the mental impact that it's doing. What can I do? They're not budging. They're the business owners. So it's up to me. And I couldn't do it. And this is where people say that I'm headstrong, where people say that, oh, Michael, this is the way the world works. And I choose to not abide by that. I believe strongly that people can be good. And regardless of these people's intent, there was a lot of times where I would question that because of the actions that would happen. But again, at some point you just got to be like, okay. And I remember the phrase, and it made me so happy. I don't want to be a part of your reality anymore. Can't do it. Can't live like that. You guys can be, I call it delusion, because from my perspective it is. If multiple people keep telling you the same thing and you don't want to see it or accept it, and we should probably do an episode about that. At what point is it delusion? Can you really not see other people's perspectives? It becomes more of, well, that's a you issue instead of a situational issue. It's so complicated. But understanding that at one point you got to stop fighting, and as hard as it may be to get yourself out of that situation, and I've really learned this recently, pain is growth. Understanding that when you're going through the hardship, when you're crying at night, anxious, overthinking things, change the perspective and ask yourself, am I going through this because I'm growing, or am I going through this because I need to get out of something or things need to change? That's a big conversation to have. But when you get to the point of understanding that at times you're stuck in a reality that's not for you, you have to be true to yourself. Even though it was one of the hardest jobs I had due to what I went through emotionally, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the experience because it truly made me stronger, even though at the time I hated my life. But now I look back and I'm like, wow, I was part of that reality, but that reality wasn't for me. I guess what I'm trying to say and what I'm figuring out is the more you know yourself, the better you know yourself, you become more grounded in who you are, which is your reality, which I think is huge. And stop letting, and right, it's complicated because yes, there are people who can be considered delusional, narcissistic, whatever it may be, if they're so stuck in their ways. But I think once you get to a certain level of emotional intelligence and you can truly see other people's point of views and then make a conscious effort to understand, but then at that point still disagree, just acknowledging that it exists, it has been huge for me. It's been game changer. So I hope that thinking about this and going over it as many times as we did helps in some way, especially if you're going through something, a hardship within a relationship with an employer and your own life. At some point you have to take ownership of that and rework your experience, your reality to something more positive, even though in the beginning it could be very hard. So I'll stop there. A lot of stuff we discussed. And I want to leave with this because I know it's super corny, but I really believe this. I see life as one big silver lining. There are times where I am going through it, especially when I get mentally exhausted and the downsides of autism really smack me in the face, and they a lot of times come out of nowhere. I can't really prep for them, which it's hard. But again, with understanding yourself, understanding your reality, it's the biggest thing. It's the biggest game changer, in my opinion. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Like the video, comment. I think that helps. I'm new to this, so that's what every podcaster or YouTuber says. And share. That is one thing that will help. Share with someone that you think could relate to this. I would really, really appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening, for watching, all of the above. Much love. Peace out.